January 29th, 2020. Hey guys, let's just jump in and look through some of the articles that I've come across over the past couple days that I find are very interesting. Hopefully you'll find her interesting too. And we can just talk about what we read about and go from there. Any feedback you guys have, put it in the comments. Love a lot of the stuff you guys have been saying with advice on how to improve on topics that we discuss in the videos. So let's move over to one of the articles from yesterday. Crystal Geyser. Bottled water company Crystal Geyser admits to dumping deadly arsenic into California's ecosystem. And nobody goes to jail. Of course not. It's just a slap on the wrist and you're good to go. So what happened here? They dumped a bunch of arsenic. First of all, it accumulated over the years, like thousands of gallons of arsenic that they removed from the water. They were storing it. So the company earns nearly $50 million per year in revenue from its spring water, but was only slapped on the wrist with a $5 million penalty for discharging arsenic-tainted water back into the ecosystem. The water was and still is poisoned with arsenic as much, as is much of the water in the western states. They use sand filters to remove the arsenic, but in an effort to increase the filter's effectiveness, the company washed out the sand filters with chemicals, removing the buildup of arsenic, and released it in an outdoor holding pond. So they held on to this concentrated arsenic water for 15 years in this pond. And then they were told that they have to dispose of the arsenic-filled wastewater. And so they just went and dumped it down a sewer. The corporate crime has largely gone unpunished, as no single employee has been held criminally responsible for enriching the naturally occurring arsenic levels in the wastewater and releasing all 23,000 gallons into the sewer. So who knows how many people's lives have been put at risk because of this reckless, industry decision. Yeah, they just have to pay a little fine and go on making their profits. So very similar, not as consequential as like the Vioxx controversy from the pharmaceutical companies when Vioxx killed anywhere from 60,000 people, some reports all the way up to 500,000 people from this pharmaceutical. They knew it was causing damage. They hid the emails. They allowed it to stay on the market as long as they possibly could while it was killing tens of thousands of people. Did anybody go to jail? No. They had to pay a $4 billion fine and onwards business, right? Who cares that we killed anywhere from 60,000 to 500,000 people? Nobody has to be held accountable for that other than financially. A $4 billion settlement was good enough there with Vioxx. So again, guys, pay attention to what industry is getting away with. And if you're seeing companies that are violating, rules and regulations and getting away with it, don't support them financially by buying their products. Move on to something else. This isn't even a great spring water anyway. They use BPA plastics. I wouldn't suggest buying their product at all. All right, moving on. Good article here in Natural News. New science proves that vaccines spread infectious disease, causing up to 15 times more infections among the fully vaccinated children. Nice little article. It's very well referenced, but it's really just rehashing the same science that has been exposed over and over again around the DTaP vaccine, basically showing you that if you've been vaccinated, you're still likely to get pertussis, and you're just going to be asymptomatic. You won't be having the cough or the fever. You'll still be carrying and spreading the infection because you have the vaccine, whereas had you just got pertussis naturally, you would be showing symptoms of fever and cough, and you would stay home and isolate yourself and prevent the spreading of the disease. So the vaccination itself and the process of vaccination and the fact that it's not a very effective DTaP vaccine is actually contributing to all of the outbreaks that have been happening specific to pertussis. We've looked at multiple studies that show this is happening. This is just another good article highlighting exactly what we already know. Another cool article here. Experts discover that walnuts can change the expression of genes that fight breast cancer. Now remember, the more we're learning about epigenetics, it's not your genes that are deciding your future. It's your lifestyle and other things like medications and vaccinations that are triggering epigenetic gene expression. And so walnuts actually showing a powerful way of expressing certain genes that can suppress breast cancer growth. So consumption of walnuts has slowed breast cancer growth and or reduced the risk of mammary cancer in mice. Building on this research, our team hypothesized that walnut consumption would alter gene expression and pathologically confirm breast cancers in women in a direction that would decrease breast cancer growth and survival. Destroying cancer at a genetic level. So the team recruited women who had recently undergone breast cancer biopsies and divided them into two groups. A control group who had no dietary changes, and then the walnut group. At the time of follow-up surgery, the researchers found significant changes in gene expression in the walnut group. This is really interesting. Samples taken from this group showed that the incorporation of walnuts into their diet affected the expression of 456 identified genes in breast cancer tumors. In particular, walnut consumption activated pathways that promote apoptosis, which is a natural cell death, and suppressed pathways that favor the growth of the migration of cancer cells. So pretty cool. Walnuts are great epigenetically for reducing breast cancer. So ladies, keep that in mind. Find ways to add them to your diet throughout the week. So other benefits to walnuts, they are packed with antioxidants. They keep your gut healthy. They're great for weight control. And for guys, they improve sperm health in men. So you'll find lots of articles like this, the health benefits of particular foods, if you follow naturalnews.com. I like this website. They are very alt-right. So there is a lot of political articles that are tied into this website as well, but that's also important. Whatever your views are there, you can read through those. But the health news at naturalnews.com really is great stuff to follow. Another pretty cool article from yesterday from phys.org showing how organic farming has advantages in increasing biodiversity amongst the acreage, comparing conventional farming to organic farming. And so this was a large-scale analysis published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences on January 27th, found that organic agriculture sites had 34% more biodiversity and 50% more profits than conventional agricultural sites, even though their crop yields were not as strong as the conventionals that are using, the pesticides and the GMOs. The profits really came from the fact that organic food is more expensive, but the biodiversity is what's really important. We need to maintain a broad biodiversity, in our landscape. And organic farming is a great way to progress in that direction of increasing the biodiversity of our land as well as the species that inhabit that land. We need all of those back. We've lost too much. Okay, another cool article where food can be medicine. They studied a very specific strain of algae, and they found that it had very powerful healing effects in gastrointestinal health. So a widespread, fast-growing plant called Chlamydomonas reinhardti is famous in scientific laboratories due to its position as the world's most exhaustively studied algae. Researchers at the University of California recently completed the first study examining the effects of the C. reinhardti and demonstrated that the algae improves human GI issues associated with irritable bowel syndrome, such as diarrhea, gas, and bloating. And it had actually had very statistically significant improvements in the gut health of the people that participated in this study. and healed their gut issues. So volunteers consumed daily spoonfuls of powdered C. Reinhardti biomass and reported the gastrointestinal health for 1 month. Of the hundreds of interested participants in the project, data from 51 volunteered met the study requirements for inclusion in the final analysis. Results showed that the participants who suffered from a history of frequent GI symptoms reported significantly less bowel discomfort and diarrhea, significant less gas and bloating, and more regular bowel movements. So this is a life changer for those that suffer with severe irritable bowel disorders. And if you've ever been there, you know that's a life-altering condition, and this helps bring some better consistency to your gut health and consistency to your daily life, right? So we know that algae is very beneficial. This is a specific strain of algae that is very impactful in GI health. Another example of algae that's been around for a long time as a health supplement is chlorella. So that is one that you can easily access and start taking. There's some great benefits to chlorella. It's very nutritious. It's loaded with protein, B vitamins, iron, vitamin C, antioxidants, vitamins and minerals, omega-3s, as well as fiber to help feed the microbiome. It's a great chelator of heavy metals, so it binds to heavy metals like mercury and aluminum to aid in the detoxing of heavy metal toxicity that we all suffer from. So it's good if you're using the silica-rich waters like Fiji or Volvic to try to remove some of the aluminum in your body. You need to be taking chlorella with it because it will help capture whatever gets released from the silica and binds to the silica. This helps grab it and remove it from your system. It can help enhance your immune system. It helps improve cholesterol. They already said it acts as an antioxidant. Helps keep blood pressure in check and improves blood sugar levels. Helps manage respiratory diseases and enhance aerobic endurance. All of that just from an algae that you can take as a supplement. That's chlorella, different from the specific algae that was studied in this GI track. But you have options, at least, that are currently available. Interesting article here. The FDA is really good at managing claims of healing from specific products or medicinal benefits, right? They're on top of it with the CBD industry, saying, hey, you can't just say this is going to cure somebody's epilepsy, because that's not the case for a lot of people. So you can't advertise it that way. And so Purell, which is an antibacterial and antiviral hand sanitizer, it's like ethyl alcohol, mostly alcohol. Some of these are bleach-based. I don't care if it's Purell or Clorox or any brand of antibacterial and antiviral hand sanitizers. They're putting out claims that they can stop you from getting sick from the common cold, from influenza, from coronavirus, from staph infections. And they're saying, we're going to kill all these germs. You're not going to get sick, and making all these wild claims. And so people are buying it up, and the FDA is saying, whoa, you can't claim this, because just because somebody uses Purell doesn't mean they're not going to get influenza or corona or Ebola or any of these. You still have equal chance of getting it through the mucous membranes of your eyes, your ears, anywhere that your body has openings outside of just scrubbing your hands. And you're not doing yourself any favor by killing the bacteria that's on your skin. That is there for a reason. Again, if you recall one of our other videos where we were talking about the gut microbiome, and that humans are only 43% human cells, and the rest of us, the majority, 57%, is actually bacteria and microbes. So you really shouldn't be using any antibacterial, any antiviral, anything. I would never buy antibacterial soaps and use them on my body, or any of these antiviral, antibacterial sanitizers, putting them on your hands, because you're just destroying the ecosystem that's keeping your skin actually healthy. And the more you use these products, the drier and cracked your skin is going to get, because you're destroying the health of your skin. So here, this is just on Wikipedia looking up human skin. Keep in mind, if you're again, using antibiotics, antivirals, anti-anything, you're killing your own life. And it's the same topically. So the skin supports its own ecosystem of microorganisms, including yeasts and bacteria, which cannot be removed by any amount of cleaning. But you can disrupt you can cause dysbiosis on your skin and not just gut. So estimates place the number of individual bacteria on the surface of 1 square inch. 1 square inch of your human skin carries at least 50 million bacteria. And this figure varies greatly over the average 20 square feet of human skin because oily surfaces such as the face can contain over 50 million bacteria, 500 million bacteria per square inch. Okay? Despite these vast quantities, all of the bacteria found on the skin surface would fit into a volume of the size of a pea, right? So they're tiny, but they're everywhere, and you need them. The microorganisms keep one another in check and are part of healthy skin. When the balance is disturbed, especially by using antibacterial soaps and antiviral lotions and things like that, there may be an overgrowth and infection, such as when antibiotics kill microbes, resulting in an overgrowth of yeast, like candida from post-antibiotics. The skin is continuous with the inner epithelial lining of the body at the orifice. Each of the sports its own complement of microbes. So we're microbes on top of microbes on top of microbes. Stop destroying your health by killing life. We need to really just move away from that type of thinking. Yes, clean yourself with organic soaps, take clean showers, keep your body clean, but don't kill things. Cleaning and killing are completely different. Okay, let's move on. Another awesome article. We're not going to go through the whole thing. I'm just going to point you over to it. This is quantamagazine.org. And it's a great article about the glial brain cells, which we're learning more and more about. This has been a highly grown area of study over the past couple decades, learning more and more about the brain. We used to just think the neurons were responsible for all the signaling. And we're learning that no, they're just as important as the glia cells. And the glia cells, and there's so many different kinds of glial cells, that they also have signaling. And we're learning that there's really not one more important than the other, and that neither can work properly without each other. So this is a really great article. Glial brain cells, long in neuron's shadow, reveal hidden powers. Go through and read this. It talks a lot about what glial cells are, different kinds of glial cells that are all throughout the brain. In fact, the classification of glial cells is so broad and diverse that it almost means nothing because there's so many different specialized types that they may just stop classifying them as glial cells and just start target classifying each individual type of its own class because they're so highly specialized. Glia were long presumed to be housekeepers that only nourished, protected, and swept after the neurons, whose more obvious role of channeling electric signaling through the brain and body kept them in the spotlight for centuries. But over the last couple of days, research into glia has increased dramatically. In the human brain, glia cells are as abundant as neurons are, yet we know orders of magnitude less about what they do than we do about neurons. So they go in and talk about some of the things that they've been able to study and see what glia perform. So they help process memories. They serve as an immune system agents and ward off infections, while some communicate with neurons directly. Others are essential to brain development. Far from being more valet to neurons, glia often take leading roles in protecting the brain health and directing its development. Pick any question in the nervous system and glia cells will be involved. So the term glia is actually glue, and they used to think that they were just, the purpose was more structurally kind of holding everything together, and we now know it goes way, way beyond that. So go in here, read more about glia and what they do. Then it goes on and talks about the microglia, which of course are the brain's immune warriors, and talking about how the oligodendrocytes and Schwann cells wrap around nerve fibers and insulate them in fatty myelin sheaths, which help to confine the electrical signaling moving through neurons and speed their passage. Astrocytes with their complex branching shapes direct the flow of fluid in the brain, reshaping the synaptic connections between neurons and recycle the released neurotransmitter molecules that enable neurons to communicate among other jobs. Microglia were originally defined in 4 papers published in 1919, but the study of them stalled for decades until it finally picked up back in the 80s. Microglial research is now growing exponentially, and the work is exposing how microglia respond to brain trauma and other injuries, how they suppress inflammation, how they behave in the presence of neurodegenerative disease, which they're chronically activated for destruction there, typically caused by vaccination or other heavy metal exposures. The cells really are at the edge between immunology and neuroscience. So this is a great article. Go in and read it if you want to learn more about glia, the recent science. What we're finding out goes beyond what we ever knew. And the more we learn, the more we realize we didn't know and made all these crazy assumptions. The way we force medicate people, we have no idea what the side effects are, because what we think we know, there's so much more that we don't. And again, naturalistic approaches are going to be your safest bet, but do your own research. Okay, let's jump into coronavirus a little bit. So this is spreading like crazy. It's going everywhere. It all started in Wuhan, and they're blaming this animal cruelty farmers market as ground zero, but is that true? So it is important to understand what else could be going on. Now, coronavirus may have originated in a lab linked to China's biowarfare program. That's right. In Wuhan, where this outbreak started, they actually have a facility that specializes in biological warfare. And there's a lot of shady shit that's been going on there, including coming from America. So it's important to understand the deadly animal-borne coronavirus spreading globally may have originated in a lab in the city of Wuhan linked to China's covert biological weapons program, said an Israeli biological warfare analyst. This is just a possibility. This obviously will, if it is true, will never be reported mainstream. But let's just kind of connect the dots. It started in Wuhan. Wuhan is the hub of a biowarfare facility where they manufacture viruses. It's not that big of a leap to see that this could have been a man-made epidemic and this got out of control, and now it's a big deal. And guess who gets to capitalize on it? Big Pharma. So here's an article that just kind of highlighting that a Harvard chemistry chair and 2 Chinese nationals were arrested for lying about China ties and smuggling biological material from here to there. So this Harvard professor, Charles Lieber, along with 2 Chinese nationals, one is a Boston University researcher who was once a lieutenant in the People's Liberation Army, according to prosecutors, and the second was a cancer researcher who tried to smuggle 21 vials of biological materials in his sock, allegedly, were arrested and are still in custody. Now, these guys have direct ties to the Wuhan facility. What is going on? Okay. So when Defense Department investigator asked Mr. Lieber in 2018 about his foreign research collaborations, he told them he had never been asked to participate in the 1,000 Talent program. The complaint said, but Mr. Lieber had signed such a talent contract with Wuhan University in 2012, and it goes on and talks about more ties to the Wuhan facility and their technology corporation and the contracts that he had with Wuhan in China. So there's a lot of corruption going on in the biological warfare space, and this outbreak is more than likely a side effect of such criminal activity in the biowarfare space. And of course, the biotech stocks are soaring because they can now rush past regulations in the name of an emergency to rush a vaccine out to the market. And there's three main pharmaceutical companies trying to jump in on this: Novavax, Inovio Pharmaceuticals, and Moderna. And they all have ties back to, in one way or another, coronavirus patents that already exist. So again, how convenient for the profiteers in the future. Coronavirus, just add it to one more fear-mongering headline that's going to come your way in the future to make sure you're getting vaccinated, in addition to influenza and everything else. Okay, so beyond coronavirus, what else is going on? I always bring up geoengineering, and it's more and more being brought into the headlines. They're trying to normalize it. More and more people are paying attention to the trails in the skies and what's going on, and so they have to just at least talk about it at a high level. And what they're saying is Congress is now actively funding a controversial geoengineering Plan B to spray particles in the sky to cool the Earth. This is the same Harvard study with David Keith, and what they want to do is go up and spray sulfur dioxide or some kind of similar aerosol into the stratosphere to help shade the Earth from more intense sunlight. Total waste of time. We need that light. It's important to us. Yes, the rays are more severe at this time, but it's only because we're in solar minimum, and the geomagnetic shield, the protective shield of our Earth, is weak at this time. This happens every 11 years. The cycle goes up and down. We are now entering solar cycle 25. We're going to start seeing more sunspot activity. This will build up the strength of our magnetic protective shield. Things are going to start to get better. But we are headed into grand solar minimum. So we're going to be having severe cold in the future. So there's no point in dimming the skies and dimming the sun and polluting the skies with these aerosol sprays and destroying the ozone layer, destroying our health, putting our health at risk by polluting the air more on purpose. Go ahead and read through this article talking about that this is actively already getting funded. And they're always pushing climate change as a justification for these types of programs. If you look at the actual science around climate change, I'm not denying climate change at all. Climate change is absolutely real, but it is tied to the solar cycles, the catastrophe cycles of the sun, of our galaxy, of our universe. Has nothing, literally almost nothing to do with carbon emissions and all that garbage. Real science finds carbon dioxide effects on the climate are negligible. Has very little to do with it. You can find this on naturalnews.com. Here's another article similar to it that's referenced in that article. 100 scientific papers. CO2 has minuscule effects on climate. This just came out a month and a half ago. And it's very heavily referenced with a ton of papers showing that really climate change is going to happen, but it's not because of our carbon emissions, and worrying about carbon emissions isn't going to solve the problem. This is just what they want you to think. It's a tool they can use to guilt you into funding their projects. The original models that they've used to justify climate change were flawed, but those are still the ones that are consistently referenced. MIT, who has published more than 200 scientific papers, says in a video produced by PragerU, it seems that the less the climate changes, the louder the voices of the climate alarmists get, which is true. Global warming provides they, all of the elite powers that are controlling the narrative here, global warming provides them more than any other issue with the things they want the most. For politicians, it's power and money. For activists, it's money for their organizations and confirmation of their near religious devotion to the idea that man is a destructive force acting upon nature. So again, there's actually some pretty strong ties to eugenics in the whole climate change initiative. If you look really far back into it all, James Corbett covers this very well in a lot of his information. I have a playlist on the Fear versus Freedom channel called They Who, which really looks into the history of the elite, the deep state that are kind of really industry running the world and influencing politicians, and what their true agendas are. So I highly suggest you start doing some of your own research there and look into that. But since we're talking about how climate change really hinges more on the sun and even beyond, we got to think bigger than just our neighborhood, our Earth, our galaxy. Everything in the universe affects us to some degree, even our health. And so I highly recommend that you guys subscribe to Suspicious Observers. Okay, Suspicious Observers is a great site where Ben Davidson goes every day and does an update on solar weather. This is going to include anything that can impact us from the sun. We're talking earthquakes, weather events, health events. For over 2 years now, I've been following this site, and I use their app, and I've been able to track major correlations between solar weather affecting our geomagnetic fields and Holden's seizures. Okay? When there's a big coronal hole facing Earth and those solar winds come and hit our geomagnetic field and compress and cause all this pressure, this triggers earthquakes. This also triggers geomagnetic disruptions, electronic geomagnetic disruptions in our brains, in our heart, in our cardiovascular system. It can increase your risk of heart attack, stroke, seizure, migraines, depression, suicidal thoughts. All of this can be connected to solar weather. So it's important that if you suffer from any of these things and you are sensitive to changes in geomagnetic fields, not only are you going to notice it from EMF exposure from the cell phone towers and your Wi-Fi routers and your cell phone and everything that's all around you, polluting you in that regard. At a much larger scale, this is coming from the sun, from coronal holes, from coronal mass ejections, solar flares, all kinds of things that will affect our health because of the sun. And we need these rays at the same time, even though they can be dangerous, to give us health and elements that the earth needs to create other aspects of our life. So, Suspicious Observer, go over to the playlists, and to start, you're going to want to go to Learn About Space Weather. Okay? You'll start with that playlist. You'll learn about solar wind, layers of the sun, sunspots, solar flares, radiation and CMEs, mega flares, geomagnetic storms, coronal holes, all kinds of the basics, so that when you're watching these forecasts every day that come out early in the morning, you can see, okay, here's what happened over the past 24 hours. Here's what we're expecting to happen over the next day or few days based on what we're seeing from satellite images. And you can be prepared. You can know, all right, there is a geomagnetic storm coming or in progress. Now I know why we're seeing increased seizures or increased symptoms of depression, or why the ER is seeing this massive increase in strokes or heart attacks. I've never seen a screen up at an ER where they're kind of tracking solar wind, but they should, because they can start correlating these events and be prepared for when they're coming to have emergency responders better prepared. So solar weather is a big deal. Once you learn about that, go into the Earth catastrophe cycle. Now, this is a big playlist, but it's a really important one. And you can either start with their movie Cosmic Disaster or start with smaller bits and move forward, which is number 2. You can start with the Next End of the World CIA classified one and then move down. And then you can jump into the movies, but really learn about the Earth's catastrophe cycle, and you'll really start to understand all of these things we're facing with climate change are normal. They're cyclical, And no matter what car you're driving or whatever, the climate's going to change. No matter how much we spray the skies, the climate's going to change. It's all based on the universe. You're not going to stop it. No matter how much you want to try to control the world, there are things that are out of your control. But they'll use it against us in a way to control us. So just some more science that came out early last year, showing that they've successfully done a lot of experiments showing that humans have, so bees use the geomagnetic fields, turtles use the geomagnetic fields, whales to navigate the planet. They're using geomagnetic fields over, hundreds of years to utilize these frequencies and fields to navigate. And they have found that we have our own geomagnetic sensing inside our bodies and brains that help us, and they specifically affect the alpha waves. And it's becoming more and more clear how and why this definitely affects our bodies, both at a cardiac level and a central nervous system level. It's a big deal. It's a good idea to track this information, especially if you have any type of health concerns, but especially neurological issues. So you can go to PubMed and learn more about it. I just typed in geomagnetic and seizure because that's close to me. And there's tons of articles all the way back to 1981 where there's huge correlations between convulsive seizures and geomagnetic activity, increased geomagnetic activity in the occurrence of bereavement hallucinations, showing evidence for melatonin-mediated microseizuring in the temporal lobe, geophysical variables. Overt limbic seizures are associated with concurrent and pre-metastatic phase geomagnetic activity. So yes, understanding the environment and why something might be going on can help you eliminate other reasons that you're trying to think could be the issue. So for us, there's a lot of dietary things that can trigger a seizure for Holden. And if we know we've been sticking to it, and then all of a sudden he's having a bad day and we're going, okay, what was it? What did we change? What was wrong? What could he have been exposed to? Just by knowing and tracking solar activity, we can know, okay, he's doing bad right now because there's been 12 earthquakes today and there's some kind of solar activity that's getting to him, or we got a health alert from the app, from the disaster prediction app that says geomagnetic activity health alert, or the KP index has been bottomed out at 0 for 24 hours, which causes a huge increase in stroke and seizure and all kinds of other issues. So again, just being aware of environmental factors for you is a big deal. Now, these solar cycles of solar maximum and minimum, sunspot maximum, sunspot minimum, how it affects the levels of rays that come to us, the amount of vitamin D we might be getting exposed to, the amount of X-ray and gamma ray and cosmic ray, and all these different things that are affecting us through these solar cycles, both major and minor cycles, right? The 11-year cycle as well as the grand cycles that are much larger, that we're headed into a grand solar minimum. These solar cycles also follow, pandemics seem to follow the solar cycles as well. So you can find this article, Sunspot Cycle Minima and Pandemics, the Case for Vigilance. We're in a minimum right now, and now we're seeing these pandemics of coronavirus for whatever reason it came to be, man-made or animal to human, whatever. The fact is we're more prone to pandemics during solar minimum because for many reasons, but the Earth's magnetic shield is weak, and that causes a cascade of issues throughout the Earth. And I'll just read one thing here. It says, significantly, in our view, during solar minimum, new viruses, bacteria, and other microscopic biological entities can penetrate the interplanetary magnetic field barrier and reach the stratosphere. Descent of such particles to ground level by means of gravitational settling might take months or years depending on the size. The final descent phase through the troposphere would be mostly controlled by meteorological events. It's also of interest to note that the first descent of viral-sized particles deposited in the stratosphere will occur at places where the stratosphere is thinnest, and by this argument, populated areas of China lying eastward of the Himalayan mountain range would present the best candidates, and that's exactly where Wuhan is. So it's therefore not surprising to find that the first strikes of our new renewed viral diseases are often recorded in China. We should, however, stress that not every minimum in the sunspot cycle would be associated with a new epidemic or a new pathogen. Additional conditions need to be fulfilled, most importantly that the Earth has recently encountered a stream of cometary debris containing disease-causing dust, phages, virions, and microorganisms. So just things to keep in mind. The world's not coming to an end. This stuff all happens cyclically. There's reasons for it. There's other studies you can find. Sunspot cycles may detect pandemic flu pandemics predictably. The information is there, and it's pretty strongly correlated with the sunspot cycles when we see pandemics of flu, influenza pandemics, solar activity cycles, and vitamin D absorption. This is a big part of our immune system, so keep that in mind. Anyway, last thing that I want to touch on before I say goodbye, let me just do one thing on my phone before we hit this article. And this article has everything to do with censorship and the suppression of truth, and who you are actually trusting when it comes to the watchdogs of truth, right? So things like Snopes and this other newer group called NewsGuard. Now this was written by Dr. Mercola, originally posted on Mercola.com. And it says, the media is using a variety of tactics to restrict your access to truth from websites like his, including NewsGuard. NewsGuard is a self-appointed internet watchdog that sells a browser plugin, like a Chrome extension, to rate websites on 9 criteria of credibility and transparency. So before you learn how they're doing it, you need to know who is funding NewsGuard, who's behind them, and what agendas are they trying to steer you toward when saying, oh, that's fake news, and this is more important, and this is right, and that is wrong. You need to be the one to decide when you're doing your own research and looking every aspect of how the story could go, deciding what's true and what you believe, because it's all perspective, it's all BS, and it's all biased in one way or another. So Publicis Group's health subsidiary, Publicis Health, names Lilly, Abbott, Roche, Amgen, Genentech, Gilead, Biogen, AstraZeneca, Sanofi, Bayer, and other big pharma giants as clients, which gives you an idea of where its loyalties lie. Publicis Group is the group over this NewsGuard, okay? So they're basically funded by big pharma. So you better believe anything anti-medicine is going to be marked as fake news, and they're going to give you all of their BS on why they're right and everyone else is wrong, okay? GlaxoSmithKline has also awarded Publicis Media a healthy piece of business in the communications group for responding by creating a custom platform, GSK, to run the drug giant's media business. GSK has 400 million to 1.5 billion Publicis collaboration. There is big money behind these groups trying to control the narrative, okay? The mainstream media are guiding you. They're putting up blinders like you would a horse to keep you in line, so that you're not distracted with truth over here and truth over here, or the lies and truth and all the muddy waters all around. They want you to only see what they're putting in front of you, so to keep you in line. And it works. You gotta question what's going on, figure out who's behind the narratives that are guiding your decision making. Who is watching the watchdogs? Right? A lot of people use Snopes as their go-to source for online fact-checking, believing they're getting an unbiased and credible final word on the wildly circulated stories. Snopes engages in massive censorship of natural health and general promotion of industry talking points. And Snopes is backed by, what's his butt? I can't remember his name. Do your own digging, but they're not transparent. They are biased, and they're supporting the mainstream narrative always. So when started as a tool to investigate urban legends, hoaxes, and folklore, has manifested into a self-proclaimed definitive fact-checking resource. That's taking on topics like whether or not vaccines cause autism. There's no science that says it doesn't, but Snopes would say that they don't cause autism. So, case in point, in their purported fact-checking of a full measure report by award-winning investigative reporter and former CBS correspondent Cheryl Atkinson, Snopes simply spewed propaganda, not real facts, in an attempt to discredit the report and the potential vaccine autism link. And her full measure report on that was fantastic. She covered the Andy Wakefield studies back in the day, and that got her fired from CBS. They attacked her, and she went on and started her own independent full measure. She has great reporting. In the end, though, they actually ended up confirming the main point for Atkinson's report. For this, Atkinson wrote, Snopes gets an F for predictable propaganda in the vaccine autism debate. Bottom line, it's important to do your own research before believing even fact-check sources like Snopes or internet trust tools like NewsGuard, which are in fact backed and supported by industry giants. So, bottom line that we say in every video, do your own research. Got it? All right. Connect the dots. Do your research. Stay healthy. Stay strong. Love you guys. Bye.